Alright guys, what's up? Today I'm just going to be going over some of the different pens that I use here. Most of them are Pigma Micron pens. I do have a couple doubles of each. What I do with them is I put tape along, let's see if I can get it here, tape along the cap, and then I put lines on the caps. You can barely see that line. You can see that one. And then I had one here. You can kind of see that's a really thick line. Just shows me the thickness, that way I don't have to read them. But I really love using the Pigma Microns. I always use them for my inking needs, unless I have a lot of black to fill in, then I always use Sharpie. But we'll start off with the smallest Pigma Micron, which is the 0.005. And they go up in increments. Just draw a nice little line there. There. Don't know how well you guys can see that little line, but that's the smallest one. Then it goes up to the next one, and I just buy them in random increments. I always get the 0.005, the 0.02, and the 0.08. There's about 8 of them in the line, but I only use these. So you can see the 3 different weights of line compared to just a regular fine point Sharpie. Now the reason I love the microns is because, let's get the biggest one here, the 0.08. If I hold it here, we'll just press it down. I'm going to hold it there, I'm going to draw a line, I'm going to hold it there, draw a line. You cannot see where I held it, just because it doesn't bleed, this ink doesn't bleed. Whereas a Sharpie, if I hold it there, and then go here, and then go there, you can see little circles right there and there, where I just held the ink there. Another thing I like about the Pigma Microns is you go on the back side here, you can see where I held the Sharpie. There's little dots. I hope you can see those. I believe you can. Whereas over here, you can't even see any of the markings I just made. So Pigma Microns do not bleed through paper nearly as bad. And this actually isn't paper. I'll go over this next week, next Wednesday. This is all the different papers and materials I use for drawing on. But this is actually cardstock, and I'll go over next week why I use cardstock. But either way, we're just going to do a quick kind of demo. I already drew a little snakeskin pattern here. We're going to use the 0.02. We're going to go ahead and ink over all of this. So we'll just get a rough ink, nothing very fancy. We'll go ahead and time lapse it. Okay, so yeah, just a very rough time lapse, and well, very rough inking, just to show you the line weight. And now we'll go over it with the 0.08. We'll just really make these outer lines thicker, just to give it more of a border to it. You always want to have a really hard line on the outside, you know, just kind of contain all your drawing. And we'll just do a rough shade. I like to shade in the form of a guy named Justin Kremer, or I don't know how to say his last name. He goes under the pen name of Angry Blue. I love using his technique, and his technique is a form of hatching. And hatching, in case you didn't know, is where you just literally just draw lines, and the closer they are, the darker the shading is, and the further they are apart, the lighter the shading is. I love his style. So we're going to be using that technique while we're shading here. We're just going to start off once again with the 0.02. I hardly ever use the 0.05 unless I'm doing really, really thin lines. But we'll start off with the 0.02, and we'll say, actually hold on, before I use that, we'll just say our light source is coming down like this. It's going down towards our object here. Terrible perspective. Either way, it's going down. So the sides are going to be a little darker because this light's going to hit them less. So either way, once again, 0.02. We'll start off, we'll say that this one's overlapping, so I just get a nice little pattern there. And we'll highlight all of our sides here. scale's gonna overlap that one. We're just gonna, and that scale's overlapping. And we're gonna make the shadows a little bit lighter this time, just because we're getting up towards the top where there's gonna be hardly any. And since this is the bottom side, we'll make this shaded and this shaded. There. And we'll actually shade this in just a little bit more, but we'll use the 0.05 just so I can give you an example of it. Make some really fine lines here. I'll actually make some fine lines here. Now on this next one, we'll make just fine lines, no heavier lines, so we can lighten the shading. We're really going to be giving a light sense of shade here. We don't want any heavy increments. And then on the other side, we will replicate the same thing. So grab our 0.02, and we'll shade it this way this time. And these scales are going to be heavy shading. So we're going with 0.02. And on this one, we'll just shade the outer edges with the 0.02. And now we'll go back in with the 0.05 and we'll add some light shades to it. On this scale, we will really add some light lines. So there we are. Now you can see on the sides here, these are the darkest areas, and down the centers here is the lightest area. So that's basically the shading technique and kind of the tools I use. You can also go back in with a Sharpie and really darken up some lines here. Or you don't have to use the Sharpie if you're really obsessed with the microns. You can go back in and just add it with like a 0.8. As you can see, just going in, doing that adds a really, really heavy line. I'll try to do it where my hand isn't in the way. And unfortunately, this pen is dry, so I kind of have to go at like a vertical angle to get it to work really well. So you can go back in and really shade those in, but that's basically the techniques. And I also use my pigment microns for my signature because they provide an amazing line. So at the very end, I will always go back in and add a signature, and then at the very bottom, add a date. So there you have it. Those are the pens I use, and that's also kind of how I shade.